Operation Ruthless. And we're having another reading about this because this is exactly how he approached Godfrey with this idea. Bletchley Park had an already broken German army and an ABWA enigma messages. But the Kreutzmerlin three-rotor encoding machine was proving a tougher nut to crack. Admiral Godfrey sent Fleming, his troubleshooter, to see Dilly Knox at Bletchley Park, a place he visited often, who told him that a German Navy code book would be of great assistance. So he came up with a plan to capture a German vessel that would be carrying the book. He soon identified that the Germans were running an air-sea rescue boat out of Denmark that would pick up air crews that had ditched in the sea after a raid. If a rescue boat could be lured to pick up the crew of a downed bomber, which would be British in disguise, the crew might be overpowered and the code book taken. Fleming outlined his idea in a note to Godfrey. DNI. 1. Suggest we obtain loot by the following means. Obtain from the Air Ministry an airworthy German bomber. 2. Pick a tough crew of 5, including a pilot, WT operator, and word-perfect German speaker. Dress in German Air Force uniforms, add blood and bandages to suit. 3. Crash plane in the channel after making SOS to rescue services in PL, that's plain language. Once aboard rescue boat, shoot German crew, dump overboard, bring rescue boat back to English port. In order to increase the chances of capturing an R or M, with its richer booty, the crash might be staged in mid-channel. The Germans would presumably supply one of this type for the longer and more hazardous journey. And it's signed with an F, that's Fleming, 12th of the 9th, 40. This was during the Battle of Britain. And crashing a plane into the sea. Now this actual Operation Ruthless was good to go on 2 occasions, but unfortunately the Germans didn't send out any rescue boats, so it was stood down. But crashing a plane into the sea, does it ring a bell? Thunderball, where a British bomber is crashed into the sea, and Spectre take the atomic bomb off them. And they have a special boat where they can load them from underneath. And that also brings us up to the 10th Italian Flotilla. This was a crack Italian naval frogman unit. Famously, they sank 2 British battleships in Alexandria Harbour. They also sank a lot of British merchant ships in Gibraltar, which is where Fleming came across. Of course, Fleming was a very keen swimmer. And actually, the 10th Flotilla is mentioned in Thunderball, the novel. So that was an idea that, although it was never implemented, it was all ready to go, but the Germans didn't give up. The next one he was involved in, and I'm sure you've heard of it, was Operation Mincemeat. Now, he came up with the basic idea of putting a body into the sea with letters that would come ashore in Spain and they'd make their way to German intelligence, indicating that we were going to attack in Greece instead of Sicily. This was in 1943. Well, actually the operation was conducted by Ewan Montague, who Commander Ewan Montague. Fleming only came up with the basic idea, but that one did actually work, as we know. The Germans did divert units from Sicily to Greece, which undoubtedly saved Allied lives. He is also sometimes credited as having written a plan for the creation of US intelligence. services. Now, William Donovan was the head of the intelligence in the US at the time, and he created the OSS, the Office of Strategic Studies, which was the forerunner of the CIA. Now, he actually asked Fleming for help to set it up.
Hello and welcome. I'm Mark Simmons and welcome to my channel. That was a short excerpt from a recent talk I gave on Ian Fleming and his career at Naval Intelligence during the Second World War. Ian Fleming was born in 1908. He was the second son of four to a family with a Scottish background. His father Valentine was killed in the Great War, so he was largely brought up by his domineering mother Evelyn. He went to Eton, where he academically didn't do terribly well, but he excelled at sport. And it was decided he would go into the army, so he went to Sandhurst. Unfortunately, there he picked up a sexual disease, and although the army might have turned a blind eye, Mother insisted he resign. So then he was sent to Austria to cram for the Foreign Office exam at a special school. I think he spent more of his time skiing and driving around. In fact, he had a near tragic accident in his car when the engine was taken off by a locomotive at a level crossing. But he duly took the Foreign Office exam along with 61 other people. He passed 25th, but there were only 5 vacancies. So he failed that one as well, much to his mother's chagrin. He then was joined Reuters, the news agency, and he quite enjoyed that. He covered some of the show trials in Moscow and a lot of motor racing events. He was in fact a co-pilot for Donald Healey of Boston Healey fame in some of the Alpine rallies, which they did very well in. And he remained a lifelong friend of Donald Healey. But it was, Reuters didn't pay terribly well, and his lifestyle was quite, he liked the high life. So eventually his grandfather read him the Riot Act that he would no longer support him financially, so he had to join the family firm, which were merchant bankers, and he became a stockbroker, which was a job he absolutely hated. And a few months before the outbreak of the Second World War, a new director of naval intelligence was appointed, Admiral John Godfrey. And although he had some knowledge of naval intelligence, he relied heavily on the advice of Admiral Reginald Blinker Hall, so named Blinker because he suffered from dyspepsia, which was a sort of dry eye complaint, which meant he couldn't serve at sea, so he was put into the backwater of naval intelligence. That was until the First World War came along, and he excelled in that position. He's probably the greatest one we ever had. He was instrumental in bringing the USA into the war. And he advised Godfrey to appoint a lot of civilians as well as naval personnel. And Godfrey asked him who he should have as his assistant, and Hall told him, well, he had a stockbroker, so he duly went off to get a stockbroker and ended up with Fleming. He often said in later life that Fleming was more like the director and he was the assistant, but we'll take that as he also came up with a basic idea for Operation Mincemeat. where a body was set ashore in Spain with documents indicating the Allies would land in Greece rather than Sicily. But although he came up with a basic idea, it was Commander Ewan Montague that would conduct the operation. He is sometimes credited also with creating OSS, the Office of Strategic Studies, the US equivalent of SIS. He was in the United States, and we have a short reading from my book where it explains how he came about doing this. Page 134 in this case. Here we are. Ivor Bryce, a lifelong friend since he had met Ian and his brothers on a Cornish beach holiday when they were boys, a member of SIS, and having worked with Donovan and Stevenson, recalled Ian telling him he had been whisked off to a room in the new annex of the embassy, locked in with pen and paper and the necessities of life, and had written under armed guard around the clock a document of some 70 pages, covering every aspect of a giant secret intelligence and secret operational organization, a blueprint for US intelligence. In later life, Fleming claimed, tongue-in-cheek, that much of it was used to create the Central Intelligence Agency. The deputy head of BSC, Charles Howard Ellis, known as Dick, felt Fleming's role was greatly exaggerated. However, whatever his contribution was, Donovan valued his input and gave him a .38 police positive revolver, inscribing it for special services. It remained one of Ian's prized possessions. So, whatever he did, Donovan was very grateful. He was also responsible for creating 30 Assault Unit, or 30 Commando, a special unit that would go in with the assault troops to obtain intelligence material. I first went into action on the ill-fated Dieppe raid, and not that that was anything to do with them. Fleming watched this from a destroyer off the coast. Then they went to North Africa on the landings there, but were not terribly successful. But in Sicily they hit the jackpot when they managed to obtain the German code settings for their Luftwaffe radar, which they whisked off to the RAF, who duly jammed the radar so as they could gain an advantage over the Luftwaffe for a few days, because the Luftwaffe soon cottoned on with what was happening and of course changed the codes, but it did give them a vital advantage during the Sicily landings. They also took part, of course, in the D-Day landings, and discovered a lot of the V1 and V2 rocket bases and some of the advanced German U-boats. They also managed to capture the entire records of the German Navy, which in a castle in Bolivia. And Fleming went over to supervise the transportation of this back to the UK. He wasn't terribly impressed with the castle, which he called Dracula's castle. Anyway, in 1946 he was demobbed from the Navy, and he did contemplate staying in intelligence with MI5 or SIS, but thought it would be, peacetime would be rather boring, so he opted to go back to journalism, and he got a job on the Times as the foreign correspondent, which he managed to get 6 weeks of the year off, which he spent on Jamaica. And his friend Ivor Bryce got him a plot of land there where he built the bungalow GoldenEye. In 1952 he was married to Anne Ruthermore, and in the same year his first James Bond book, Casino Royale, came out. And in 1961 he suffered a heart attack, and while he was recuperating in hospital he wrote the children's classic Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which he had been telling his son Casper stories about his flying car at bedtime. In 1964 he suffered another massive heart attack and sadly died, aged 56, far too young. I hope you enjoyed my video on Ian Fleming's War, and here's the book. You can obtain it at my website, whose details will follow. Thank you for listening. Please click and subscribe, or leave a comment or a like, and see you next time.